Alright, week 2 of the Overwatch League. It was a pretty good week for me with points on the pick'em charts. So for the West region, Friday, Vancouver and Paris. I thought it was going to be a closer match. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Vancouver just proving that without Shockwave, they're nothing. Dalton incompetent on the hit scan for them. Rolf not being a very good flex support, and the coordination just really not being there. Gladiators and Spitfire. I was looking a little low on Gladiators and looking higher on Spitfire, but Spitfire proving that they, against the Gladiators, they weren't able to do what they could do in scrims. Saturday, Houston, 3-1ing the Paris Eternal. I expected it to be a 3-0, but they decided to play KSF over Dante on watch point, which was not a good idea, as Paris just took advantage of that and beat them out easily, as Dante is a much better tracer than KSF, and that's exactly what he was playing. They tried to pull a shock and experiment on Eternal when they really shouldn't have, and it really bit them there to make them lose that point and mess up their differential a little bit. Boston and Gladiators. I didn't expect Boston to win that, but I didn't expect them to lose it as horribly as they did. The coordination, again, just like Titans, just not being there, and then just them being completely outdone by the Gladiators at every single point that they could. The team was looking to be strong, but Boston was not able to pull it off. Justice and Fuel went exactly the way I thought it would go. Decay and Assassin just ripping through Dallas. And again, just like what Houston did, Dallas got a point because they decided to play Jerry and Assassin rather than Decay and Assassin, which gave Fuel the opportunity on Blizzard World to take the victory on that map, but not the entire series. Sunday, Houston and London, 3-0. That became expected, especially after the loss against the Gladiators. Houston just looking really strong. London looking pretty weak, unfortunately. But the victory for Houston was expected. Boston and Dallas. Dallas is definitely not a bad team. They're just missing a core piece, that being a hit scan. But Boston couldn't take advantage of that, as I'm 37 plays McCree, which is a mid to close range hit scan as opposed to a long range hit scan like Ash. So Dallas was never really taken advantage of in that position, which gave them a massive edge over Boston because they could play the comps that Boston really couldn't. Vancouver and Washington. Vancouver's just good at taking a map, I guess. Really. I guess just throw Vancouver a point on any match they're in. Not really much to comment there, just Justice being much better than Titans throughout most of that battle. Slight mistakes here and there, but it was definitely close on Titans' part, but again, they just never were able to capitalize on shatters from Shredlock or Ant Matrixes put out by Rolf. Into the East region, Chengdu 3-0ing Nixel. I expected it to be a definite domination by Chengdu, but I still expected Nixel to get a point, even after they 3-0'd Shanghai. Fusion 3-1ing Spark. I expected that to go that way. Fusion looking strong, even missing Funny Astro and Shockwave. But they don't really need Shockwave, as Carpe is definitely the better of the two on the hit scan roll. Spark and Nixel on Sunday, 3-1 on Nixel's side. Spark is just kind of looking a little weak this year. Nixel also looking not that great, but definitely a little better than the Spark this week. Chengdu and Fusion. I expected Fusion to definitely get 3-0'd. And if they didn't, I expected it to just be like the result was, a 3-1 or maybe even a map 5. Originally, that is one that I actually did really change on Saturday after I saw Chengdu 3-0 Nixel. I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe Chengdu has this, but they didn't. It's kind of unfortunate, but Chengdu's still looking really strong. Fusion also looking really strong. So really, it was anyone's game at that point. So for this week's predictions on my end, Paris and Atlanta on Thursday because of May Melee. 3-1 on the Rain. Rain's looking not so great this year, but Paris is looking awful this year. They can definitely pull off a few map victories, but I don't see them winning many series. Maybe against teams like Vancouver, but I don't see them going much else. Justice and Uprising. 3-0 in Justice easily. Boston looking really weak. Justice looking really strong. I could see Boston maybe being a 3-1 if they decide to run Jerry and Assassin like they did against Paris. Uprising in London. It's going to be a toilet bowl match, honestly, in my opinion. But it could go either way. Uprising or Spitfire. I'm actually going to give it to Spitfire over Boston now that I'm thinking about it. Just because I think they're going to have better coordination than Uprising. Really, I'm 37 is not pulling his weight like people were expecting. Neither is Valentine. But I still feel that they're going to be it's going to be a very close matchup, and it could really go either way. Shock and Mayhem. I see Shock 3-0ing both of their opponents this weekend, or at least for Friday and Saturday before the May Melee, because Shock, once they lose, they go full try-hard mode, and 3-0 the rest of the field up to the tournament. And I expect it to be that way. Even if Shock did beat Houston, I expected it to be a 3-0 against Mayhem regardless. Justice Defiant, even with Sato, Hisu, and KDG, I still do think Justice are going to get the victory against Defiant, just because Justice is looking absurdly strong with Decay. Saturday, Florida against Paris. Florida's going to get 3-1. Paris is just going to be just like Vancouver. They take a map off of everyone, but they can't get the victory. Or even a map 5. Defiant and Spitfire, I'm going to give it a 3-0. Just because London, again, is looking really poor. Defiant is looking strong. Shock and the Rain, 3-0, easy. Same logic as Florida. Same reasoning as Florida, even if it wasn't the same with Houston and Shock. Shock still would have 3-0'd both of them. Into the East region. Friday, Valiant and Charge, going to be another toilet bowl, just like Boston and London. However, I think Charge is going to get the victory over the Valiant. Then you have Seoul and New York. New York, I think, is going to 3-2. It's going to be a close matchup. It could go either way, in my opinion. This is going to be I feel like this is going to be the rivalry of APAC, as well as Chengdu and Philly. Despite the results of what happened this past week, Seoul and Valiant 3-1. I think Valiant's going to be just like Paris and Vancouver. Take a map off people, but they can't get the victories. However, Valiant does look really strong, I think, for what people are expecting of them. However, I still don't think they're going to get many victories. Charge and Spark. Spark looking a lot weaker than they were last year. Charge also looking a lot weaker than they were last year. But I think Spark is definitely going to be the better team this year. Shanghai, New York, it's going to be a 3-0. Same with Spark and Dragons. Because of the previous weeks, they both have faced the Shanghai Dragons and have lost 3-0 both times. And then you have Sunday. I think for the West region, either Shock or Houston are going to win the tournament. As for the East region, I think it's either going to be Shanghai, Chengdu, or Fusion. It's going to be a close one. Now I'm going to go through a quick power rankings for entering the Melee. So, I have Shock up at number 1. It's kind of an obvious pick. Shock is just going to look really strong, as they do every year. Houston looking really strong and is going to be a close competitor to Shock, I feel, this year. Unless the meta takes a dramatic shift. It could still go either way for me. Houston and Shock are definitely going to be two very close competitors regardless. Fusion, number 3, only undefeated team in the East region still, after beating Chengdu this past week. Even with, again, like without Funny Astro and Shockwave, they're still looking like a good team. But we'll have to see what the Melee presents with us. Justice, Decay, Assassin, Bebe, Closer, Fury, all really good players, and I think that they work really well together and can really carry the team up to the top echelon like they proved they could be in the grand finals with just Decay, Stitch, Janu. It's going to be definitely a big year for Justice. Definitely going to pick up some major victories. Hopefully they can carry that momentum into tournaments and actually beat opponents like the Shock and the Outlaws, as well as East region teams like Shanghai, Fusion, and the Hunters. Shanghai at number 5. Shanghai is still a really good team. I don't think they're going to be knocked off the top really at the end of the year. I still think they're going to be beating the Fusion out regardless. Just because Fusion, even then, is still an inconsistent team, especially in tournaments. They might pick up a lot of victories over the Dragons in the regular season, but when it comes to playoffs and tournaments, Fusion is definitely going to fall against the Dragons. The Hunters, one of the most surprising teams this year, next to Houston, pulling off this big 3-0 reign against Shanghai and Nixel, looking really strong, and they can actually play the meta as opposed to just playing Farsi and Ball constantly. Gladiators, a disappointing team this year, but they still are a very strong team. Moth, Kevster, Birdring, still very strong players, still very coordinated together, but I feel like they just need a little bit more time to get closer and to really work even better together. Defiant, KDG, Sato, and Hisu really bringing the team together and really showing that those three can really build a strong team together. KDG, really one of the best coaches next to Krusty, and which is why I think Fusion was really looking like they were going to be a weak team this year, because they lost KDG as well as Hisu, Ivy, and Sato. But both teams have proved that they are very strong regardless. Florida, I think the reason why I'm ranking them so high up, actually it is the reason why I'm ranking them up so high, is because of they're looking strong because of the teams that they're facing. They have a pretty easy schedule outside of Shock on this week's knockout rounds. I think they're going to fall off, though, a little bit. The team isn't looking all that much better. OG is definitely not a better main tank. but I still feel like they're going to be a decent team. Dallas, number 10, only needs a hit scan. Once they get a hit scan, they will be definitely a force to be reckoned with. It would be nice to see them get XD back, but XD retired, so it could all just be a matter of who do they pull up. Could they pull someone up from contenders, or do they go for someone from another team or the free agency? Do they go with a Korean player? Do they go with a Western player? It would be nice to see them pick up someone soon, hopefully just after May Melee or even before, because we still have an entire week before we get to those matches. New York and Seoul, definitely going to be two very close teams. I could put them in either 11 or 12. Either team could go either way. Looking really forward to see where they can go from May Melee. Spark looking okay this year. Definitely not bad, definitely not good. So it all just matters on where they can go after May Melee. If they can improve on their coordination and their team compositions and really focus on playing the meta a lot stronger than they have been. The Reign, not looking all that good this year. However, I'm still looking forward to seeing where they can go. Losing Edison and Erster were definitely big hits. But I do think that Gator is definitely happy that he doesn't have Edison there to constantly block his shatters. Boston, definitely a really disappointing team. The hype for I'm 37 and Valentine was huge, but they weren't able to capitalize on that. And I feel that given a little time, Boston could improve a lot, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. London, pulling a lot of their players off of the Hurricane. One of their players not even being 18 yet, so we could see where they go from that once he turns 18. But until then, I see Spitfire being an easy 16th. Being one of the lowest teams in the West region, but a strong team nonetheless, especially once they get their full team put together. Paris really does not look all that strong this year. Of course, obviously, they dumped their star roster, Axie soon, Sparkle, all of them. It's unfortunate, but looking to see where they can go this year. Definitely not going to be that high up on the rankings ever this year, unless they really pull off some massive power moves and can pull off a surprising few victories. Valiant, definitely one of the weakest of the strongest. Definitely could pull off a good showing, especially of what people have expected of them. The full Chinese roster, the team not really looking like they have star power, but I feel like they could possibly pull something off, like pulling some close matches against the Charge, against Spark and Dynasty. But one team that won't be doing any of that is the Charge against the top tier teams. Really one of the most disappointing teams this year. Not really losing all that much out of the team outside of Happy, which I think is probably one of the reasons why they're doing so poorly. Happy probably really held the team together along with Eileen. The team, I really wish they could do a lot better. I hope they do better this year. And I don't see them doing very good in the Melee, unfortunately, unless they can pull something out and get some new players here very soon.